What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the DFS Dose YouTube channel. I'm Ben Harvard, joined by Joey Carrion, and today we're going to get you guys ready for redraft season. We've done a ton of off-season content with our podcast, which you can find on all podcast platforms, and today we're coming in with the rankings. You can find my rankings exclusively on the DFSDose.com, and today we're talking quarterbacks. So, Joey, before we get into it, how about you tell the people how they can support our show?
All right, so you can obviously support us by hitting the subscribe button right down below. It's free to subscribe, so go ahead and subscribe to the DFS Dose YouTube channel, which you're on right now. Hit the subscribe button, and then you can like the video as well. It helps us out a ton. It will help us reach new viewers, so go ahead, hit the like button, and this is part one of a 4-part series where we will be breaking down each positional rankings that Ben has put out himself, as he mentioned, on the DFSDose.com, which you can find in the description down below. We will link every single one of his rankings and each video in the description, so go ahead and check that out. And then, as Ben mentioned, we are a podcast, so you go ahead and find us on iTunes, Spotify, SoundCloud, and even Podcast Addict at the DFS Dose. So go ahead over there. If you just want to listen to the audio, we do 1 episode a week. We're going to go to 2 episodes a week in a couple weeks, starting with the NFL season. So yeah, go ahead, subscribe over there, follow, all that stuff, like, leave a review, and yeah, leave a couple comments on how you like Ben's rankings in this video as well. So let's just get into it.
Yeah, let's get into it. And we can start right off with this sort of top tier, or really it's a top 2 tier, but it's going to be the top 7 quarterbacks in my rankings in order. Patrick Mahomes 1, Lamar Jackson 2, Dak Prescott 3, Kyler Murray 4, Russell Wilson 5, Deshaun Watson 6, and Josh Allen 7. So, the way I have this broken down is that Mahomes and Lamar Jackson are kind of a clear-cut top tier above the rest. And then 3 through 7, Dak to Josh Allen, are guys that I really consider to be, within the range of finishing top 2. They just have enormous upside. All of them are guys that have, a certain amount of ability to pass the ball and run the ball as well, which is definitely going to boost their stats in a 4 points per passing touchdown league, as just about every single league is these days. So these are guys that I just think have a whole nother degree of upside. And when I draft them in, say, best ball or something like that, these are the guys, and this is the tier of guys that I feel comfortable only drafting 2. So if one of these guys is my QB1, I'm likely only going to be drafting 2 guys on that roster. Naturally, if we're talking redraft, you're really only ever going to be drafting a max of 2 quarterbacks anyway, sometimes even 1. But yeah, Joey, how do you feel about this tier of guys? Is there anybody missing? Is the order incorrect, do you think? Give me your thoughts.
Yeah, I definitely agree with your rankings, especially with these top 7 guys. Patrick Mahomes at 1, Lamar Jackson at 2, Dak at 3, Kyler at 4. I think that is correct. You can make a case for Russell Wilson and Deshaun Watson to be higher on this list. I would consider putting Wilson and Watson over Kyler Murray. But Lamar obviously was the best fantasy player last year besides Christian McCaffrey, finished as, the number 1 quarterback. Dak finished as the number 2 quarterback. Russell Wilson finished as the number 4 quarterback. So, the guys in this tier are definitely the right guys to have. Now, obviously, the order could be debated, but I think you got it right on the head with this tier. So
yeah, and I really love Russell Wilson in this tier, to be honest with you. I think that he is a threat to finish as the QB1 overall every single year. He's just held down by an offense that doesn't let him turn it loose. So that's really why I have him all the way down at 5. I think that you could definitely make the case that he should be higher than 5, but it's just a matter of, we know what this team wants to do. They want to run the ball with Carson and Carlos Hyde and Rashad Penny. It's like, if this team could run the ball 40 times per game and limit Russell Wilson to 20, 25 pass attempts, they will. So, that's what it comes down to, but I do love him. Same thing with Watson. He could definitely be higher, but with the loss of DeAndre Hopkins from this offense, even though they did replace him with another capable receiver in Brandon Cooks, I've just got him there. And then finally, Josh Allen at 7. He was very productive last year. He's proven to be a dangerous, red zone rushing quarterback, kind of like a modern day, early career Cam Newton. And with the addition of Stephon Diggs, I think that this offense is poised to just take a complete another step in the right direction. John Brown was a great addition for them, and Cole Beasley was as well. But let's be honest, those guys should be in the roles that they're in now, with John Brown as a wide receiver 2 and Cole Beasley as a wide receiver 3, with Steph Diggs being the true alpha. Brown, not a bona fide wide receiver 1 in the NFL. So I think that Allen has the potential to really take his game to the next level with a really, really solid core of receivers around him now.
Yeah, I mean, the Bills have done a good job with surrounding good pieces around Allen in his young career, and he finished as the QB6 last year. I think that is more so due to his rushing numbers. He led the NFL in quarterback rushing touchdowns with 9. He was also up there in rushing yards as well. He was QB3 in terms of rushing yards with 510 rushing yards. So if he can provide that rushing upside every year, he's going to finish as a QB1 no matter what, no matter how good of a passer he is. And I know that I'm not a Josh Allen fan. I will admit that. If you're watching this and you haven't listened to the podcast, there's been numerous episodes where I've just been on a full Josh Allen hate train. Okay. Now, I don't think he's a good quarterback, but we can distinguish that he is not a good quarterback, but he's a good fantasy quarterback, which he is. He's a great fantasy quarterback. He finished top 6 last year. With that being said, it's all about, can he take the next step in terms of his passing ability? He only threw for 20 touchdowns last year, barely cracked 3,000 yards, also had 9 interceptions. Can he improve on those numbers in this year? Can he improve on his league worst accuracy ratings? That's what I want to see. And with that reason, I'm personally not drafting any Josh Allen because I just don't think he's a good quarterback. But I could see why people have him as high as they do, and I think it's correct. But for me, it's not my taste.
Yeah, I mean, I think Diggs is going to provide a huge spark to this offense. But yeah, I mean, with having 2 seasons in the NFL and no lower than 8 rushing touchdowns, I just think Allen is just super, super high floor, super high ceiling. We can move on to the next tier of quarterbacks I've got here, and this is basically what I would say is my favorite tier of quarterbacks to draft from for multiple reasons. And this tier consists of the guys that I have ranked 8 through 16, starting with 8, Matt Ryan, 9, Tom Brady, then Matthew Stafford, Baker Mayfield, Daniel Jones, Aaron Rodgers, Carson Wentz, Ben Roethlisberger, Big Ben, and at 16, Jared Goff. And the thing about this tier that I think is so appealing is, especially if you are looking to be in a best ball tournament or even in redraft, I would be prone to stack myself, I think. And a lot of these guys provide extremely high upside stacks at affordable prices. You look at Matthew Stafford, who, his number 1 wide receiver is usually the top of the 3rd round in Galladay. Same with, Big Ben and Mayfield. You can get Odell and Juju in the mid 3rd round. You can get, Godius Slayton, aka Darius, and at for Danny Dimes at a very affordable price, 8th, 9th round, and get Dimes later. So it's like, what are we doing here? I think it's a really solid tier of guys. How do you feel about this tier? Is there anything that you notice or would change?
Yeah, I mean, I like this tier. I mean, I like your rankings in general, especially for the quarterbacks. I think Matt Ryan and Tom Brady and Matt Stafford are top 10 fantasy quarterbacks this year. And like you mentioned, there's just a lot of upside with drafting stacks from those teams. Obviously, we've seen Atlanta be a pass-heavy team, which provides a lot of upside for Matt Ryan. And if you can get Julio or Calvin Ridley with Matt Ryan, and then obviously Brady in Tampa Bay with Bruce Arians, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Rob Gronkowski, there's a lot of upside there. And then, some guys that you mentioned with Big Ben and Danny Dimes, I think those are great quarterbacks to draft in, the 8th, 9th, 10th round, because there is a clear-cut drop-off after these quarterbacks in this tier.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. And, some other guys in this tier are guys that are, you could consider bounce-back candidates. Guys like Aaron Rodgers, who didn't have the best year last year. Guys like Carson Wentz, again, didn't have the best year, had his entire, offensive skill position group injured or, just not available. And Jared Goff as well struggled last year, but has shown in the past that he can be a fantasy QB1, and he's got a ton of weapons and, Higbee, Kupp, Woods, etc. So, are any of these guys in sort of the bounce back category? I guess you could consider Big Ben that as well, coming off injury. Is there anybody that you're particularly bullish on that you think is going to sort of maybe reestablish themselves? Somebody like Rodgers or Wentz, who in previous years, coming off of better years, we'd be drafting higher, or maybe some guys that you don't expect to bounce back at all?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it all depends on what you consider bouncing back. Because, Carson Wentz finished as a QB9. Aaron Rodgers finished as a QB10 in PPR. Jared Goff finished as the QB13. So these guys were all basically quarterback ones last year. It's just there was, a perceived notion that they weren't good, or their fantasy seasons weren't good, because of the teams that they were on, like how you mentioned with Wentz, and how the Eagles basically had no weapons for him to throw to besides Greg Ward, But I think Carson Wentz will finish higher than QB14. If I had to pick somebody that I think you're too low on in this tier, I think Carson Wentz is a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. I think Aaron Rodgers and Jared Goff and Big Ben are accurately ranked. Obviously, Big Ben is the prime bounce back candidate in this tier, in my opinion. Obviously, he has QB1 upside, high QB1 upside, with the Steelers' offense and the skill players that they have around him. So I guess if I had to pick one, it would be Big Ben. But other than that, I like this tier.
Aaron Rodgers is a guy that I am very torn about. I have him ranked at QB 13, and I sometimes catch myself wondering if maybe it's just a name value thing, because I think that he's one of the more talented, pure talent quarterbacks in the league. But when you look at this offense, they've got Devontae Adams, and then they've got a bunch of question marks. They are basically signaling to us that they're going to be a run-heavy team with the addition of A.J. Dillon in the second round, opposed to a wide receiver, as well as drafting Jordan Love, which signifies the end of Aaron Rodgers, I think, in Green Bay, at least putting him on a timer, and he said as much that he probably won't finish his career in Green Bay. So, I think it could go either way. Maybe Rodgers is one of those guys that's going to come out super motivated and just tear the league up this year and remind people or prove to his next team that he's worth giving a big contract or trading for. But I also see a reality where Aaron Rodgers has a very tough year in a run-heavy offense with limited weapons outside of Devontae Adams. So he's the one guy that I'm a little bit worried about in this tier, I think, out of all the others. And some of my favorite picks, I would say Baker Mayfield and Daniel Jones at 11 and 12. I have them right on the cusp of being quarterback ones. I think that both of these guys are just in offenses with so much talent that they could explode. Baker Mayfield had a very disappointing year last year after being hyped up all last offseason, with the addition of Odell Beckham and Jarvis Landry. But still, the skill on this team is unreal. Odell, Landry, Austin Hooper, Chubb, Hunt, and some ancillary guys as well, like Njoku and Rashad Higgins. And then with the Giants, they're loaded at every position. Barkley, Godius Slayton, Sterling Shepard, Golden Tate, Evan Ingram. It's just, these are two offenses with quarterbacks that I think could just be completely elevated by the skill positions around them. And if they put it together, sky's the limit.
Yeah, for sure. I'm just not too sure that I would have them above guys like I just mentioned, like Carson Wentz, and Big Ben in rankings, but I could see why you have them as high as you do. And I mean, I agree that they're in great offenses surrounded by great talent. Just don't know if I could pull the trigger on having them ranked above some of the established veterans where we know what we're going to get from them.
Yeah, and that's probably a good transition here. And I think it's important at this point to say that my rankings are not median projections. That's what a lot of people do for their rankings. They sort of, rank the median outcomes of what they expect players to be and rank them as such. I don't do that. I definitely value upside more than what I believe the median to be. So yes, I'm going to draft somebody like Baker Mayfield and Daniel Jones ahead of a guy like Wentz or Jared Goff, even though I think that it's very realistic that the guys later finish above them. It's just that I am drafting, this is the order that I'm drafting these guys, and I'm drafting them with the intention of finding a gem that can blow up the league, and that's how I view these things. So that is the reason why in this next tier of guys, I have Drew Brees all the way down at 17. I know Joey has an issue with that, and this is a tier of guys that I essentially want no part of. Starting at 17 and then going to 24, Drew Brees, Cam Newton, Joe Burrow, Teddy Bridgewater, Phillip Rivers, Ryan Tannehill, Jimmy Garoppolo, and Kirk Cousins. These are guys that, I think have some potential for boom weeks on, a week-to-week basis, but ultimately I view their upside as being low-end quarterback ones and more likely will finish as QB2s. So, how do you feel about this tier? And I know that you have some feelings about Drew Brees being all the way at 17.
Yeah, I mean, Drew Brees at 17 is just wrong, in my opinion. I mean, we don't agree on everything, if viewers, and this is one thing that we just don't agree on. Drew Brees is still a great quarterback in one of the best offensive schemes behind one of the best offensive lines in the NFL. He'll finish as a QB1 if he plays a full season. I mean, we've seen it for his entire career. He's finished as a quarterback 1 if he's played a full season. Not to mention, he was tied for 5th in passing touchdowns, and he only played 11 games last year. So if he plays those extra 5 games, he's, a top 12 quarterback easy. He leads the NFL in passing touchdowns. And yeah, I think just having him at 17 is disrespectful. Absolutely disrespectful. He should be above Goff, Big Ben, Aaron Jones, Mayfield, Daniel Jones, for sure.
Yeah. And, he probably will finish ahead of 17, but I wanted to rank him low enough to, convey the point to the people out there that I will be drafting absolutely 100% 0 shares of Drew Brees. I want no exposure to a 41-year-old quarterback with 1 foot out the door, already signed his, post-NFL contract to go and be a commentator for NBC. This is a man who's trying to be the next Tony Romo. He's not trying to be a great quarterback anymore. And not to mention the fact that he's got a 5,000-yard quarterback, the sole proprietor of the 30 for 30 club, 30 touchdowns, 30 interceptions, and Jameis Winston waiting behind him to give Michael Thomas an even better year than Brees gave him last year. So between Taysom Hill getting in there, vulturing some touchdowns from Brees, and honestly, a pretty thin group of skill position guys. Yeah, like they do have Michael Thomas, phenomenal, top 2-3 wide receiver in the NFL. They have Alvin Kamara, top 5 running back in the NFL. Then they have a bunch of washed up scrubs. Emmanuel Sanders, age 36, 35, 34, something.
33.
Yeah, old man. Jared Cook, age 36, 37?
33.
Old man. And
finished as the tight end 7 last year.
Then Traquan Smith, Treyway, shout out to him. He's all right, I guess, but still, just a bunch of question marks after the top 2 guys. And yeah, it really just comes down to not wanting to draft a guy who's playing in his last year. I would rather be out a year early than a year too late. And that's what it comes down to for Brees with me.
But you're not going to be out a year early if we know this is his last year. That has
Well, I'm not in.
no way.
I'm not in.
But you would have been out early last year since this is his last year, technically.
I was out last year, and I'm out this year too, and I'm not getting back in.
I mean, I guess it's just the notion that, you don't think Jared Cook is a good player or Emmanuel Sanders is a good player, when in reality they are solid pieces in that offense. Like I just said, Jared Cook finished as a top 7 tight end last year, and that was without Drew Brees for 5 games. So I still think he is a viable part of that offense. I don't think he's a bad player like you do. But yeah, Drew Brees at 17, way too low. He should be higher. But I guess, that's your bold take of this year, so I'll respect it.
Yeah, absolutely. What are some of the other guys in this tier that stand out to you? I mean, if Cam Newton, I think, is a complete question mark. He could have upside that should put him in the tier above this, or he could be a complete question mark. I mean, as early as, this week, we heard reports that, Belichick might get a little crazy and start rolling out some Jarrett Stidham, Cam Newton, rotations or something like that. I mean, what do you think, notoriously a biased Patriots fan, if you listen to our podcast, what are your thoughts on Newton for fantasy this year? I've got him at QB 18.
Yeah, I think that's a solid ranking until we see what Cam can do on the field. Obviously missed pretty much the entire season last year with a foot injury, and who knows how that's going to affect him for the rest of his career. I mean, all signs say that he's healthy, he's good to go, and we fully expect him to be the Patriots starter week 1 with Stidham's hip injury, which occurred in training camp a couple days ago. So yeah, I think it's a fair ranking for Cam Newton. Obviously has the potential to finish much higher due to his rushing upside, and I think Cam Newton with Josh McDaniels could be a deadly combo for the Patriots in real life and in fantasy, especially if they give him a lot of red zone, attempts at the goal line. So yeah, I think it's a fair ranking. Obviously, he's probably the biggest wild card out of any quarterback in this list. But yeah, like I said, I think it's fair, and we just have to wait and see with Cam. So,
and I'll just fire off some quick thoughts about these other guys. Joe Burrow at 19. I mean, I think the Bengals offense could be loaded, but I'm not too bullish on the majority of the rookies, besides maybe Clyde Edwards-Helaire, but especially with these rookie quarterbacks and less time to prep and learn the cadences of an NFL offense. Although I think that Joe Burrow's future is very bright in the NFL, I would rather just wait until next year to look at him, with the way that COVID's affected the offseason. So, at 19, that's about where I would expect him to finish. Teddy Bridgewater is one guy in this tier that I think I've been lower on. I moved him up quite a bit in my last ranking to get him up in this range. If Matt Rule opens up this offense with DJ Moore, Curtis Samuel, and Robbie Anderson all capable as, deep down the field options, Bridgewater could surprise, I think, and elevate himself out of this tier. Rivers, I expect to finish higher than QB 21, but again, it's an upside question. How high, can he realistically finish? I don't think it's super high, but he will probably finish ahead of 21. He's a great floor guy who often falls much later than QB 21 in drafts, so I don't mind him in that range. And then the rest of these guys, Tannehill, Garoppolo, Kirk Cousins, I mean, they're just on offenses that want to run the ball more than anything else. So I think volume is the biggest issue. And unless they have some type of insanely efficient season like the way that Ryan Tannehill had last year with Tennessee, it's just going to be really hard for them to be QB1s, I think. So that's why I've got them ranked there.
Yeah, and I agree with those rankings. I'm not too high on any of those quarterbacks as well, besides Phillip Rivers, who I've been high on. I think he does have some upside being drafted, in the 16th, 15th round of drafts. So I like Phillip Rivers, but other than that, I'm not targeting guys like Tannehill, Garoppolo, Kirk Cousins, for the sole fact that they are on run-first teams. So.
All right. Yeah, agreed with that. So then we can move on to the final grouping of guys here. Quarterbacks 25 through 32. Starting at 25, I've got Derek Carr. 26, Gardner Minshew. 27, Sam Darnold. 28, Drew Lock. 29, Dwayne Haskins. 30, Nick Foles. 31, Justin Herbert. And 32, Tua Tagovailoa for Miami. How do you feel about this tier? The way I look at them personally are that they're either guys who are not locks to start 16 games, with the exception of maybe Darnold. And yeah, I don't know. I think that these are guys that, have some degree of upside, but it's just limited in my opinion, mostly due to the offenses that they're on.
Yeah, I mean, this is the tier of trash. I mean, it's that simple. I mean, I don't want any parts of, Derek Carr, Dwayne Haskins, Nick Foles, Justin Herbert. I think Drew Lock is also a lock to start 16 games with Sam Darnold, so I would include him in that. And Gardner Minshew is also a lock to start 16 games, in my opinion. So I think those three guys will start the full seasons, but obviously their offenses are not that good. I think the guy who could surprise the most is obviously Drew Lock, because the Broncos have done a great job surrounding him with a lot of young talent, and Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton, Noah Fant, KJ Hamler. They signed Melvin Gordon. They still have Phillip Lindsay. So I think Drew Lock could be the wild card in this tier. I think he has the highest upside out of any of these quarterbacks, just due to the talent that surrounds him. And he was a good quarterback prospect coming out of college. So I like Drew Lock a lot.
Yeah, I'm not too crazy about Drew Lock, to be honest with you, but I think that, you're right about the offense. Jeudy, Fant, Sutton. Yeah, it is a loaded group of guys around him, but they're definitely going to want to run the ball a ton with Melvin Gordon, Phillip Lindsay, and even Royce Freeman to some extent, I imagine. I'm interested in Derek Carr, although I think that it only takes 3 or 4 week stretch of bad games for them to give Mariota a shot. I don't think that his role is super secure as the starting quarterback, but the Raiders did a ton to, revamp this offense, and adding Henry Ruggs and Brian Edwards and Lynn Bowden and, even Theo Riddick recently. So I think that Carr has a much, much stronger supporting cast around him that could help him elevate sort of to the standard that he was a few years ago when he was actually pretty productive. And if I were going to choose one guy that I think could surprise from this group, I think it would be Sam Darnold. And I know that Darnold hasn't been the best quarterback up to this point. He's had a lot of shaky stuff go on, the mono, the bad coaching, and that hasn't gone away with Adam Gase there. But this team has arguably the worst defense in the NFL, worst secondary, especially with the trade of Jamal Adams. And I think that they're going to be trailing a lot, and it's just going to cause Sam Darnold to be in a very high number of games with really positive, game flows for him to be just slinging the ball to Brashad Perryman and Denzel Mims. And I think that is really the reason to like Darnold. He has shown the ability to be a good quarterback in spurts, I think. I think he's held down by the coaching, but he's only 23 years old, and he has made some really incredible throws at points. He just hasn't been consistent. So, maybe he can take it to a next step this year, and hopefully the Jets will get rid of Adam Gase and, hashtag free Darnold at some point. But, I think that he's just going to be a guy who is throwing the ball a ton this year, and hopefully Perryman and Mims can help him get there in fantasy.
Yeah, I like Sam Darnold as a quarterback. I think he is solid. I think he has some upside with some of the players that they surrounded him with Perryman, Denzel Mims, Chris Herndon coming back. Obviously, they still have Jamison Crowder and Le'Veon Bell. So they have a solid group of skill position players. I think the biggest factor, like you mentioned, is Adam Gase. He's just a complete donkey. Terrible head coach, probably one of the worst in the NFL. Well, not probably, he is one of the worst in the NFL. And he just does everything in his power to limit his players' upside. So I think that's the biggest knock against Sam Darnold, but I wouldn't be surprised if he finishes higher than his rank of 27, which you have him at.
Yeah, and then I guess the last thing I just want to hit on before we get out of here is how do you feel about the two rookies, the other two first-round rookies that I have at 31 and 32, Justin Herbert for the Chargers and Tua for Miami? Surprisingly, it looks like Tua is good to go. Like, and there was a lot of speculation at draft time that he might be a complete, redshirt rookie in the NFL, but I don't think that's going to happen. I mean, Ryan Fitzpatrick, he's fun. He's going to sling it, but eventually they're going to get Tua in here. I'm sorry. Tua is not sitting out the full year. And, there are some people out there who think that Tua is the best quarterback in this class, better than Joe Burrow. So, I mean, is there a chance that Tua at 32 could completely surprise? I mean, he's going to be going into an offense with Devontae Parker, Preston Williams, Mike Gesicki, quietly loaded. And if Tua can come in and be what he, is billed by some to be, I mean, he could blow this ranking out of the water.
Yeah, for sure. Especially if he only sits for like 2 or 3 games and he comes in and plays 13 games. He will definitely finish higher than QB 32. I mean, I think he is better than Joe Burrow. I mean, the injury just hurt his stock a lot. I mean, not a lot because he was drafted in the top 6 picks, but it took a college football breaking record year for him not to be the number 1 overall pick. So I like Tua a lot. I think he is probably a top 12, top 15 quarterback in terms of talent in the NFL as a rookie. So I'd be willing to take a shot on him, in the 18th, 17th round of these best ball and redraft leagues. So I like Tua a lot. But with Justin Herbert, the other rookie that you mentioned, he's just trash. So I'm never drafting Justin Herbert this year. He just sucks. He's not a good quarterback. You can go watch his tape at Oregon. He's not good. He's not a good quarterback. Tyrod Taylor is the starter there, and I don't see Justin Herbert overtaking that unless Tyrod is, just absolutely garbage, which could happen. But I think Tyrod is, he's an average quarterback. He's not going to win you games, but he's not going to lose you games either. So no on Justin Herbert, yes on Tua.
I don't know, man. During this last episode of Hard Knocks, Justin Herbert was really hitting the ball right through some very, stationary like tires, kind of like that Mitch Trubisky drill where the things weren't moving and he like was missing it every single time. Herbert was actually nailing it. So I mean, he
was hitting them.
Yeah, he was hitting them, and Tyrod was like looking from the side, like, oh damn.
I'm not gonna trust an HBO show that only wants to show the best moments.
That is fair. Teams definitely have final say in what gets shown on that. So probably for the best. Yeah, I'm with you. Maybe we'll even flip Tua and Herbert after this video. But that's going to be it, guys. Thank you for watching. We're going to have a running back, wide receiver, and tight end video in this series dropping all within the next couple of days. So make sure you stay tuned. Like Joey said, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of that. Like this video. We appreciate it. Comment with your thoughts below. Tell me I'm a fish for having Drew Brees at 17. Or, tell Joey that he's a fish for wanting to draft a 41-year-old quarterback who wants to be a broadcaster more than a quarterback. Let us know. We want to hear that feedback.
No. How does locking up your future make him want to be a broadcaster over a quarterback? That makes no sense. If he's playing for the Saints, his main goal is to win a championship, leave on a high note. That's what he's focusing on.
I mean, Joey, I would love to be a professional Warzone player. I'm the best Warzone player in our squad, but
that's cap.
I am focused on this podcast and this business. You don't see me grinding Warzone every day, because I'm lasered in on what my primary focus is. And I just don't think that Brees has that focus. But, commenters, let us know who's right about this. We need to know. So, yeah, thanks for watching. And you can find new episodes of the DFS Dose podcast every single Thursday. And we'll be expanding that to 2 days per week during the NFL season. So subscribe on Spotify, Apple, Podcast Addict, SoundCloud, every single podcast platform. We are there, and we'll talk to you guys soon.